Lisa stood in her perfectly polished kitchen, holding a photograph in her manicured hands. Her brother had mailed it with a sticky note that simply said, "Meet your niece, Naomi." In the photo was a newborn baby, swaddled in pink, with wide dark eyes and a full head of curly black hair. Lisa stared at it for a few seconds, expressionless. Then, without a word, she slid the photo into the back of a drawer. She never framed it, never called to say congratulations, and never asked about the baby again. You see, Naomi was black. Lisa was not. And while she never said it out loud, never used slurs, never posted anything hateful, her silence spoke louder than any word could. At every family gathering, Lisa kept her distance. When people asked why she never visited her brother's side of the family, she just muttered something about being busy. But the truth was more painful and much more human. She believed that little girl didn't belong. 18 years passed. Naomi grew up not knowing what it felt like to be fully accepted by her own blood. Her mom died young. Her dad worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Naomi always wondered why her dad's family never came around. She saw pictures of cousins she'd never met. She heard stories of her Aunt Lisa, who apparently threw elegant dinner parties, donated to charity, and made the world's best pecan pie. But she never once reached out, until the day everything changed. Lisa was dying. Her liver was failing fast. Her name shot up the transplant list, but time was running out. Her body was rejecting every possible match. One final test, desperate, unlikely, was run through the National Donor Database, and it came back with one match, one person out of millions who could save her: Naomi. Lisa hadn't seen her niece in person since the day she was born. She didn't even know what the girl's voice sounded like. But now that girl, the one she'd refused to acknowledge, was her only chance at living. So, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, Lisa made the call. "Naomi," she whispered into the phone, her voice shaking. "It's Aunt Lisa. I need your help." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Naomi said something Lisa would never forget. "Oh, now you remember me." What happens next will challenge everything you think you know about forgiveness, justice, and what it truly means to be family. Because sometimes the person you once pushed away becomes the only one who can bring you back. Lisa wasn't always this cold. She hadn't grown up thinking she would ever reject her own family. In fact, as a teenager, she used to sit on the porch with her brother Marcus and make grand plans for the future. He'd be a lawyer, she'd be a chef. He'd live in New York, she'd stay in Georgia but fly up every Christmas. They were close, inseparable even, but something began to change as they got older. It wasn't sudden like flipping a switch, it was quiet, subtle, like rust forming on a gate you forgot to oil. The first crack came when Marcus brought Simone home for Thanksgiving. Simone was smart, funny, and stunning, with deep brown skin and a smile that could melt tension in any room. Lisa smiled too at first, polite, cordial. But later that night, while washing dishes, she whispered to her mother, "She's not what I expected." Her mother dried her hands slowly. "Well," she said, glancing at the hallway to make sure no one was listening, "he's always been different. We raised him better, but he's made his choices." That sentence sat heavy in Lisa's chest, but she didn't question it. She didn't argue. She just nodded, letting that quiet prejudice slip into her bloodstream like poison. Marcus and Simone married the next year. Lisa didn't go. She said she had work, claimed she couldn't find a flight, but in truth, she deleted the invitation as soon as it arrived. She didn't approve. Not because Simone wasn't kind, she was. Not because she wasn't accomplished. She had a master's degree in education. But because she did fit the picture Lisa had in her mind of what family looked like. When Naomi was born, Marcus sent photos, called, left messages. Lisa ignored them. She told herself she was just giving them space, but deep down it was shame. Shame mixed with stubbornness. Each year that passed, the silence got easier to maintain. Until eventually, Naomi became a ghost, spoken of in whispers, referenced in past tense like some distant cousin no one really knew. Lisa built a life that looked good on the outside. She had the house, the car, the garden parties. She surrounded herself with friends who looked and thought just like her. And when race came up, she'd say, "I don't see color, I treat everyone the same." But in truth, she did see it. She just didn't want it at her table. Meanwhile, Naomi grew up in a different world entirely. Her mother, Simone, tried to raise her to believe she was enough, strong, smart, beautiful in every way. But the world had its own lessons. Naomi learned early how to hold her breath when walking through department stores so people wouldn't assume she was stealing. She saw her father's eyes harden every time someone asked, "Is she adopted?" at school pickups. And the silence from her dad's family, that stung most of all. On her 10th birthday, Naomi asked her father why none of his relatives ever called or visited. He hesitated, then said carefully, "Sometimes. People don't understand things right away, but that's not your fault, baby." She nodded, pretending to understand. But that night she cried herself to sleep. Kids feel these things, even when adults try to protect them. As Naomi got older, she stopped asking questions. She poured herself into school, sports, volunteering. On paper, she was exceptional, but beneath the surface there was a wound, a sense of not being fully accepted. Not because of anything she'd done, but because of who she was. And on the other side of that wound was Lisa. Every year, Marcus sent a holiday card. Every year, Lisa threw it away. She even blocked his number after a while. But one Christmas, something strange happened. Lisa ran into an old friend at church who had moved to the same city as Marcus. They got to talking, and the woman casually mentioned, "Your niece is quite the athlete. I saw her win a medal at the state track meet." Lisa froze. She didn't even know Naomi ran track. She didn't know anything about her. But instead of calling her brother, she buried the moment deep. Denial was easier than guilt, and pride was easier than change. But deep down, something had shifted. For the first time in years, Lisa pulled out the old photo, Naomi as a baby, big eyes, round cheeks. She stared at it for a long time, then put it back in the drawer again, still not ready. And so the years rolled on. Then came the diagnosis. Lisa was always healthy. She ate well, exercised, never smoked. But one day she collapsed while gardening. Tests revealed advanced liver disease, genetic, aggressive, and unresponsive to most treatment. Doctors told her she needed a transplant and fast. Her friends rallied. Her church prayed. Her colleagues organized a donor drive. But no match came through, until one did. It was her niece. The same niece she had erased from family photos, ignored on birthdays, and rejected before she'd even said her first word. The irony was cruel, cosmic, inevitable. Lisa didn't sleep the night she found out. She paced the floors, gripped by fear, not just of dying, but of being denied the one thing she'd denied Naomi all her life: humanity, compassion. Family. It took her 2 days to work up the courage to make the call. When Naomi picked up, her voice was clear but distant. Lisa could barely breathe. "Naomi," she began, voice cracking, "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. But I need your help. The doctors say you're my only match." There was silence, a long, breathless silence. Then came the words Lisa feared most, but knew she deserved. "Oh, now you remember me." Lisa closed her eyes. The weight of her choices crashed down all at once. Years of silence wrapped into one sentence. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have been there, I should have. Loved you. I don't expect anything, I just needed you to know." Naomi didn't respond right away. Then she said softly, "Let me think about it," and hung up. Lisa sat alone, phone in her lap, tears falling freely for the first time in years. Naomi grew up with questions no child should have to ask, quiet ones that echoed in the background of her life like a song she couldn't turn off. The most haunting of them all was, "Why doesn't she love me?" She never said those words aloud, but they lived in the small spaces. Like when she noticed her father's face tighten at the mention of his sister, or when she looked through the family photo album and realized there was no trace of anyone from his side of the family. Just gaps, empty pages, smiles that stopped at her mother's side of the bloodline. Her childhood wasn't void of love, far from it. Her mother, Simone, was warmth embodied. The type of woman who left notes in lunchboxes, who danced barefoot while cleaning, who whispered affirmations into Naomi's curls at night like prayers. "You are strong. You are beautiful. You belong." Her father, Marcus, was the steady hand, gentle, patient, tired but trying. Together they were enough, until they weren't. Simone passed suddenly when Naomi was just 8. An aneurysm, the doctors said, silent, fast, cruel. Naomi remembered waking up to flashing lights outside her window, her father's face soaked in tears, the ambulance doors closing. After that, the house fell quiet. Too quiet. No more singing in the kitchen. No more whispered affirmations. Only shadows and the low hum of grief. Marcus did his best. He became mother and father, protector and provider. He made pancakes every Sunday and sat front row at every school event, even if he came straight from his second job in janitorial uniform. But even the strongest hearts carry scars, and he couldn't protect Naomi from every ache, especially the ache that came from absence. The first time Naomi asked about Aunt Lisa, she was 10. It was after school, during a history project on family ancestry. The teacher had assigned them to map out their relatives. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, drawing out branches she barely understood. She turned to her dad and asked, "Do I have any aunts or uncles on your side?" His shoulders tensed ever so slightly. He nodded. "You have an aunt. Her name is Lisa." Naomi brightened. "Can I meet her?" Marcus looked down at the papers in front of him, took a deep breath, and said, "She doesn't really talk to us anymore." That was the first crack. At 12, Naomi Googled her aunt. She found a social media page, private of course, but the profile photo showed a woman smiling, glass of wine in hand, surrounded by people who looked nothing like Naomi. White, polished, posed. The caption read, "Family is everything." Naomi stared at it for a long time, wondering what version of family excluded her. What part of her had made someone decide she wasn't worth knowing? She never told her father what she'd seen. She just quietly began removing the idea of extended family from her dreams. No big Thanksgiving dinners. No Christmas cards, just her and Dad. That was all. By high school, Naomi had mastered the art of carrying invisible weight. On the outside, she was radiant, president of the student council, track team captain, straight-A student. Teachers praised her work ethic. Coaches admired her discipline, but few people ever saw her crack. She kept the sadness tucked behind her smile, in the pauses between conversations, in the long walks home where she'd take the scenic route just to avoid going back to a house that still echoed with the ghost of her mother's laughter. Sometimes, when she was alone, Naomi would take out the one photo she had of Lisa. It was sent to her father in a family Christmas card years ago. Lisa had never written Naomi's name on the card. It was addressed only to Marcus. Naomi had noticed. She always noticed. But still, she studied that photo as if it held a clue, some signal of what she had done wrong just by existing. Her bitterness grew quietly, not loud or angry, but heavy. It shaped the way she viewed belonging, the way she approached new people. She built high emotional walls, guarded carefully. She didn't trust easily because somewhere deep down, she believed that even people who were supposed to love you might choose not to. Then came her 17th birthday. It had been a hard year. Her father was working overtime, often coming home with a limp and bags under his eyes. Naomi had just applied to college, hoping for scholarships. That night after dinner, Marcus handed her a small envelope. "I was saving this," he said, "but I think you're ready." Inside was a letter, old, yellowing at the edges, folded with care. It was from her mother. Naomi opened it with shaking hands. The handwriting was soft, slanted, familiar from old recipe cards and school notes. The letter read, "My beautiful girl, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there beside you. But I'm always with you. You were born into a world that might not always see your light. Some people will turn away without ever truly knowing you. But their blindness doesn't define your worth. You are worthy. You are love. One day, someone may ask you to do something hard, something that tests the size of your heart. I hope when that moment comes, you remember who you are, not who they told you to be." Naomi cried for the first time in months. Not because she was sad, but because for once, someone had seen her future and given her permission to be more than her pain. The call from Lisa came 6 months later. The voice on the other end was barely recognizable, fragile, breathless. "Naomi, it's Aunt Lisa. I'm sick. I need a transplant. The doctors say you're the only match." Naomi froze. It wasn't shock. It was a kind of bitter déjà vu. After nearly 2 decades of silence, Lisa's voice had returned, wrapped not in apology but in desperation. And Naomi, for all her poise, felt something primal stir inside her. Anger, confusion, grief that had been buried too long. "Oh," she said flatly, "now you remember me." There was silence. Then Lisa's voice cracked. "I don't deserve your help, I know that, but I had to try." Naomi hung up. She didn't scream, didn't cry, just sat there holding the phone, feeling the weight of every year, every unanswered question, every missing birthday card. She knew no one would blame her if she said no. But her mother's words echoed like a drumbeat in her mind. "You are love." Could she find grace in the same place she was denied it? Could she give someone a second chance who had refused to give her a first? That night, Naomi didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, arms crossed behind her head, thinking not just about Lisa, but about the kind of woman she wanted to be. Not because Lisa deserved her kindness, but because Naomi did. Lisa had never believed in irony. She believed in order, routine, and making the right choices early in life so you could avoid unnecessary drama. Her life was built on structure, cherrywood cabinets, freshly cut lawns, pressed linens, and a circle of friends who laughed politely and never raised their voices. Even when she cut people out, like her brother, it wasn't with hatred. It was with neatness, quiet, polite erasure, like cleaning dust off a shelf and pretending it had never been there in the first place. But life, she would learn, doesn't stay neat forever. The day she collapsed in her backyard, she'd been trimming hydrangeas. It was warm, Georgia warm, sticky and sweet. One moment she was humming an old gospel tune, the next she was face down in the mulch, unable to move her legs. The ER doctors ran tests, blood work scans, more tests. Finally, one said gently, "Ms. Howard, your liver is in failure. It's likely genetic, advanced. We'll need to get you on a transplant list right away." Lisa blinked at him. "There must be some mistake. I don't drink, I eat kale." The doctor sighed. "That's good, but this isn't lifestyle-based, it's deeper than that." They started treatments, medications, weekly visits, but nothing worked. Her body was shutting down slowly, like a dimmer switch being turned in reverse. Her once crisp voice slurred, her legs swelled, her energy dropped. Friends offered casseroles, neighbors sent flowers, but no one could give her what she needed, a liver. More specifically, a compatible donor with a rare blood marker that made finding a match nearly impossible. She wasn't at the top of the donor list. Too old. Not critical enough, yet. She waited and deteriorated. One night in a sterile hospital room, a nurse walked in holding a clipboard with shaking hands. She was smiling. Lisa was too tired to smile back. "We found a match," the nurse said softly. "A perfect match." Lisa's breath caught. "A match?" "Yes, it's a relative match, a family member. We ran a cross-check through the National Living Donor Registry, and well, it's a bit unorthodox, but Naomi Howard, she's your niece." Lisa froze. The name hit her chest like a hammer. Naomi. The girl she had ignored, erased, denied. The little baby from the photo she never framed. The young woman she never sent a single birthday card to. And now, by some twisted grace of fate, Naomi was her only shot at staying alive. She didn't respond right away, just stared blankly at the nurse. "You're saying," Lisa finally said, voice thin, "that the girl I haven't spoken to in almost 2 decades is the only person who can save me?" The nurse paused. "Yes, ma'am." That night, Lisa didn't sleep. She lay in the hospital bed, surrounded by wires and soft beeping machines, staring up at the ceiling tiles like they held some answer. All she could think about was the sound of her brother's voice, years ago, when she hung up on him after Naomi's birth. The way she'd folded that baby photo in half and stuffed it into a drawer. The countless family events she'd skipped. The empty seats, the silences. Now the silence was her prison. Her pride, once so sturdy, began to crack like old paint, and under it, regret. It took her 3 more days to gather the courage to make the call. She had the hospital social worker reach out first, neutral, professional, but Naomi asked to speak directly. Lisa agreed, barely able to hold the phone with her trembling hands. When Naomi's voice came through the speaker, it was calm. Controlled, not angry, not emotional, just strong. "Naomi," Lisa rasped. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, and I know I've hurt you even if I didn't say the words, but the doctors say you're the only match, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm asking for your help, please." There was a pause, not long but heavy. Then Naomi replied flatly, "Oh, now you remember me." And the line went dead. Lisa didn't cry right away. She just sat, stunned, the dial tone humming in her ears. For the first time in her life, she was forced to confront the full weight of her choices, not in theory, not from behind a wall of rationalization, but in real time, in her bones, and it hurt more than the disease ever had. Meanwhile, Naomi sat on her bed, phone in her lap, pulse racing. It wasn't that she wanted Lisa to die. It wasn't about revenge. But there was a deep-rooted ache that had never been spoken aloud. Years of being invisible, of knowing you were rejected before you ever said your first word. That kind of pain doesn't just go away because someone says, "I'm sorry," especially when they only say it after they realize they need you. And yet, Naomi wasn't a child anymore. She was a woman now. And with that came the haunting realization that sometimes doing the right thing has nothing to do with fairness. It's about values, legacy, what kind of human being you choose to be in moments of impossible decisions. Her mind spun in loops. She never even sent me a card. She erased me. But if I don't help her, do I become like her? Is withholding compassion the same as what she did to me? For the next 2 days, Naomi spoke to no one, not even her father. She journaled, prayed, walked alone, looked through old pictures of her mom, her younger self, the photo of Lisa she had once hidden in her sock drawer, unsure why she'd kept it all those years. Then she found the letter again, her mother's letter, the one that said, "One day someone may ask you to do something hard, something that tests the size of your heart. I hope when that moment comes, you remember who you are." Naomi closed her eyes. She didn't owe Lisa anything. But maybe, just maybe, she owed herself something bigger: peace, power, the ability to say, "You didn't break me, and I choose who I become." So she picked up the phone. "Hello." Lisa answered, barely a whisper. Naomi took a breath. "I'll do it," she said. "Not because of you, but because I refuse to carry this pain any longer." Lisa broke down. She didn't say thank you, not right away. Just sobbed, deep, guttural sobs that came from the place where guilt lives. The irony was complete. The child she rejected was now the woman who would give her another chance to live. Naomi had made the call, but her heart wasn't at peace. After hanging up, she sat in silence, the weight of her decision sinking in like stone. Agreeing to be a living donor was more than just a signature. It was permission. Not just for doctors to open her body, but for history to reopen old wounds. It was saying yes to someone who had only ever told her no. And while her voice had sounded calm on the phone, her soul was anything but. The hospital sent over paperwork almost immediately. A flurry of emails, blood tests, psychological evaluations. Naomi moved through them with mechanical resolve, but each step felt like peeling back a layer she had long kept hidden. In the quiet of her apartment, she questioned herself 100 times. Why am I doing this? Why now? Is this forgiveness? Is this weakness? Her father noticed the change in her almost instantly. Over dinner, he watched her push food around her plate, eyes distant. "You want to talk about it?" he asked gently, the way only fathers can when they already know the answer. Naomi sighed. "I said yes." Marcus leaned back, expression unreadable. "To the surgery." She nodded. He didn't say anything right away, just let the moment breathe. "I'm not surprised," he said finally. "You're not." He shook his head. "You've always had your mother's heart. She gave even when it hurt." Naomi looked down. "But does that make me noble or just foolish?" Marcus was quiet for a beat. "Sometimes those two things look exactly the same." That night, Naomi sat on her bed reading online forums about living donors. She saw stories of complications, of relationships that didn't heal even after the gift. Some donors felt peace, others felt resentment. She didn't know where she would land. What she did know was that every part of this felt deeply unfair. Lisa had lived a life uninterrupted, free of Naomi's existence until now. And suddenly she needed her, just like that. No apology letter, no real explanation, just desperation wrapped in medical charts. And Naomi, despite all logic, had said yes. But deep down, the decision had little to do with Lisa. It had to do with Naomi's own need for closure. She didn't want to carry this bitterness into her adult life. She didn't want to become hardened, closed off, skeptical of love. She had seen too many people swallowed whole by pain that wasn't even theirs to keep. And if she didn't let this go, really let it go, it would follow her into every friendship, every relationship, every moment of joy tinged with the memory of being invisible. So she went forward. At the hospital, she passed psychological evaluations with quiet poise. When the counselor asked her if she felt pressure or guilt to say yes, she said honestly, "No, I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for me. I want to choose who I am." The counselor tilted her head. "And who is that?" Naomi smiled faintly. "Someone who doesn't let other people's choices define her heart." Still, the days leading to the surgery were heavy. Naomi kept dreaming of her mother, soft, wordless dreams. In one of them, Simone was brushing Naomi's hair in a sunlit room. No words exchanged, just comfort. When Naomi woke up from that dream the night before the operation, she cried for her mother, for herself, and strangely for Lisa. Because she finally understood, Lisa wasn't powerful. She wasn't some towering figure. She was broken, flawed, afraid. And while that didn't excuse anything, it explained a lot. The morning of the surgery, Naomi rode to the hospital with her father. Neither of them spoke much. Marcus held her hand in the elevator, and before they parted ways at pre-op, he said quietly, "Whatever happens, I'm proud of you. And your mother would be too." In a nearby room, Lisa lay in a gown, pale and trembling. She had cried more in the last week than in the last decade. Every breath reminded her of what was about to happen. Her pride had been ripped from her, stripped down to nothing but raw human need. She hadn't seen Naomi yet. The hospital staff had kept them apart, honoring Naomi's request for emotional space. But she knew that young woman was somewhere down the hall, preparing to give up a piece of herself. For her, Lisa didn't know how to live with that. She didn't know how to deserve it. The surgery was long, complicated but successful. Lisa would recover slowly. Naomi would bounce back quicker, young, strong, healthy. But something inside both of them had been altered, not just physically but spiritually. When Naomi woke up, the nurse smiled. "You did great," she said. Naomi nodded, groggy but alert. Her father was waiting in the room, eyes rimmed red. "She's awake," he whispered, as if announcing a miracle. The next day, Lisa asked to see her. Naomi hesitated. She didn't want to be bombarded with guilt or apologies or declarations. But eventually she agreed. Lisa entered slowly, leaning on a walker. Her face was thinner now, more fragile. But her eyes held something Naomi had never seen in them before: humility. She sat beside Naomi's bed and took a long breath. "You didn't have to do this," Lisa said. Naomi didn't respond. "I don't expect forgiveness," she added. "I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm sorry, not because you saved me, but because I should have seen you before I ever needed saving." That hit something deep. Naomi looked at her, not as a villain, not as a stranger, but as a broken human being who had finally removed her mask. She didn't say, "It's okay." It was, but she nodded. That was enough. Lisa began to cry quiet, grateful tears. "You gave me life," she said. "Now I want to spend what's left of it trying to be better." Naomi still wasn't sure what their relationship would be from that day forward. They might never be close. She might never call her aunt again. But she had chosen the kind of woman she wanted to be. And that was everything. In the days that followed, messages poured in from family, from strangers who heard the story, from other young women struggling with the weight of inherited pain. Some asked, "Would you do it again?" And Naomi always answered, "Yes," not because she earned it, but because I decided my story wouldn't be built on revenge. It would be built on power, the kind that comes from choosing love even when you could have chosen hate. Recovery was slow but steady. Naomi walked the hospital hallways first, weak at first, then stronger each day. Her body would heal. The scars would fade. But the decision she made, the emotional weight she carried into that surgery room, would stay with her forever, not as a burden but as a reminder. That she had chosen something higher than revenge. That she had broken the cycle. Lisa remained in the hospital a little longer. Her new liver, Naomi's gift, was functioning, slowly stabilizing her failing body. Doctors were cautiously optimistic. Nurses marveled at the fact that the donor had been her estranged niece. "You're lucky," one nurse said. Lisa nodded, but she didn't feel lucky. She felt cracked open. For the first time in her life, she saw herself clearly. Not as a victim of tradition or a woman protecting values, but as someone who had hidden behind fear for too long. Fear of change, of discomfort, of facing her own reflection in someone else's eyes. Now, her body survived because of the very person she had tried to erase. A week after the surgery, Naomi prepared to go home. She was cleared for discharge, physically at least. Emotionally, she wasn't sure. Her father stood at her side as they packed up the last of her things. Lisa had asked to see her again, one last time before they both returned to the separate lives they'd been living. Naomi agreed. They met in a small, quiet garden behind the hospital. It was early morning. Dew still clung to the petals. Naomi sat on a bench, a blanket around her shoulders. Lisa approached slowly, still leaning on her cane. She didn't sit immediately. For a moment, she just stood there, looking at Naomi with the kind of eyes that had seen too much, too late. Finally, she lowered herself beside her, silent for a few beats. "I spent most of my life pretending I was right," Lisa said softly. "Even when I knew I was. I thought if I stayed silent, it would make it easier to live with the choices I made. But it didn't. Silence doesn't erase anything, it just buries it deeper." Naomi looked at her, not angry, not cold, just quiet. Lisa turned her face toward her niece. "I don't expect a second chance. I don't even expect to be forgiven. But I want you to know, what you did saved more than just my life. It saved something in me I didn't know was still there." Naomi took a breath. "I didn't do it for you," she said, gently but firmly. "I did it so I wouldn't carry your hate in my body one day. I didn't want to become you." Lisa nodded. She didn't flinch. It was the truth, and she needed to hear it. "I understand," she said. "And I hope one day I can become someone you're not ashamed to know." The wind passed through the trees gently. Birds began to stir. Naomi stood, blanket falling from her shoulders. She turned to Lisa and said quietly, "Goodbye." It wasn't cruel, it wasn't angry, it was final, kind even, like closing a door softly behind you. Lisa watched her walk away, not with bitterness but with a strange, aching gratitude. Sometimes redemption doesn't come in hugs or reunions or perfect endings. Sometimes it's just the chance to become better after you've already done the worst. And sometimes, the most powerful goodbye is the one that leaves space for a different hello someday.